Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Hey, welcome to Target Market Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, the founder of Kasman Capital Group, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast, I need you to do me one favor, take a minute and leave us a 5-star rating and review. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're interested in multifamily investing, you are in luck because I have something special for you. We have a free sample deal package to help you understand how we put deals together that can help you either as a passive investor, if you're looking to figure out how to look at different deals, or if you want to be an active investor, you can learn how we reach out to our network. So just go to kasmancapital.com/sample deal and take a look at the sample deal package that we put together for you. You'll also join our exclusive mailing list and get a chance to get exclusive investment opportunities if you qualify. Again, that's kasmancapital.com/sample deal. Now, today we're going to be talking to Travis Chappell. Travis is a direct sales consultant, real estate investor, and a professional connector. Now, he's the creator and host of Build Your Network, a top 25 business podcast dedicated to helping entrepreneurs cultivate genuine relationships, grow their inner circle, and leverage a powerful network the right way. So welcome to the show, Travis Chappell.
John, what's up, my man? Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. Now, Travis,
Yes,
I did a podcast host rookie mistake. I should have clarified. How do I pronounce your last name? I said Chappell. Is that correct?
That is right. Yes, sir. You guessed the right way, which is rare. I'm not going to lie to you. It's rare. Most people guess Chappell. So
Chappell, love it. All right, Chappell, good to get it right. All right, so let's break down a little bit of what you do, right? Why don't you take 30 seconds and describe yourself to our audience in your own words?
It's a good question. So I help 6- and 7-figure business owners amplify their message and add an additional income stream to their business through the power of podcasting. So I'm a podcast coach and consultant to keep it really short and sweet for you.
Okay, excellent. So the podcasting is really a great way to build the network. As you and I both know, it certainly helped us kind of build our connections, get out in front of more people. But how did you get into podcasting? What was the first thing that sparked you to go down this pathway?
I was a consumer of podcasts, to be honest. I just listened to a ton of them. So after a while of listening to a bunch of shows, I just thought it'd be fun, thought it would be interesting. It was one of those things that I looked at like the risk versus the reward, and the reward seemed to heavily outweigh the risk. So I jumped in, man. It was just like, man, worst case scenario here. I spend a lot of time getting to know a ton of people. I learn a lot and have fun. And like best case scenario, I turn it into a full-time business and live my ideal lifestyle. So pretty much like pretty beneficial, like either way, so just eventually jumped in head first and started getting to work.
Awesome. So when did you launch your first podcast?
August of 2017.
Okay. So you've been in for a couple of years.
2 years. Yep.
So 2 years, you've launched the podcast, Build Your Network. What really was the idea or the challenge you were hoping to solve with this podcast in particular?
Yeah, honestly, it was kind of scratching my own itch. I wanted to network with high-level individuals, and I wasn't great at it. I didn't know how to get in touch with them. And so I just kind of embarked on this journey to figure it out. And then when I would figure stuff out, I would just share it back with my audience and report it back to people and say, this worked, this didn't work. And then started getting better and better and better guests on the show. And then it kind of snowballed on itself. And so now what I would say is I help people that listen to the show learn the new way of networking. I think that like typically I meet two types of people who don't network or people who love networking, but it's the 1980s version of networking where they're trying to get business all the time. They shove your business card or contact information in your face and they want to transact on the first point of meeting, or else they view it as a not great networking experience. Yeah. And then there's the people that are so afraid of becoming that guy that they never jump into it because they don't want to be the spammy, annoying friend that hands out business cards at their like dinner parties, So there's like those two groups of people. And I think that there's a new group of people that's emerging, which is like the new networkers, the people that have figured out how to do it the right way, and that are really jumping into it in a way that, it's more beneficial. And to be fair, like this way has kind of been around for a while. It's just that not a lot of people share it, because people who figured it out tend to be in other businesses, and they use the skills and knowledge that they know in networking in their businesses, but they don't teach the networking side, because that's not what they're supposed to teach. They're teaching how to invest in real estate, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not talking about networking, even though networking is a huge part of their success. They're talking about how to find and source a deal or whatever. So I just saw there was a little bit of a blue ocean there for somebody to jump in and like teach people how to network the right way, but I didn't know how to do it very well. So it was just kind of like a journey from getting started of like, all right, well, I don't have to tell people that I'm an expert, and I can just kind of be a reporter and investigator and figure out as much as I can and report it back to people. And then fast forward a couple of years, it's worked out really well.
Well, you said a couple things. I love how you talked about the 1980s version of networking, right? So going out, giving out your business card. Well, what do you do? Can you help me? Well, let's schedule a sales call or something like that, right? Where they're like really rushing and trying to get to the point, trying to get to the sale, which I think turns off a lot of people right now. And then the opposite side of that, the folks who don't really want to put themselves out there or don't want to come across as pushy or salesy. So they actually never even talk about what they do or how you might be able to help them in their business or how they might be able to help you. So you kind of miss that opportunity to actually build a genuine connection based off of either their skill set, their expertise, or what they're trying to do to drive value. The other thing you talked about was not having to be the expert yourself, but getting that information from the guests and then sharing that. I mean, that's one of the things that I love most about podcasting. And if anyone is thinking about podcasting, obviously Travis is a great coach. He's got some great platforms that he's doing to help educate people in that space. But the thing that I loved about podcasting, very similar to you, was I started by trying to scratch my own itch, which for me was I was investing in Chicago. I started to look in other markets because as we wanted to partner with other investors, we realized we couldn't deliver the same kind of returns in Chicago, at least in the neighborhoods I wanted to invest in. So I started looking in other markets, but I was scared that I wasn't using the right data points to truly identify the best submarkets. You talk to brokers, you talk to agents and other property managers, and they'll tell you all where the hot areas are, but I didn't see the data that supported it. So I wanted to learn how other successful investors were identifying the best places to invest. Now, the show's obviously progressed since that time frame, and it has evolved from just market research to be more about marketing holistically and finding the best deals. But what you talked about as far as building your network, that is a core element of real estate investing. You have to have brokers, you have to have property managers, you may need investors. So it's a core component. I want to talk a little bit more about networking specifically and how investors, folks listening to this podcast, can do a better job building their network. So let's go back to where you started. You mentioned kind of the bad way of networking. Can you give us some more examples of the bad way of networking? And then I'd love for you to talk to us about maybe some best practices or some things that really stood out to you that maybe wouldn't have been as obvious if you weren't running your show?
Yeah. So first off, bad things about networking. Anybody that teaches like the art of schmoozing or how to work the room, things like that. I don't disparage anybody. First of all, I you do what you want, and obviously you wouldn't be teaching if you didn't see some success from it. I just tend to disagree with a lot of the things that they teach. So any of those types of styles of networking and the traditional cocktail mixers, like I've tried to go to a couple meetups in Vegas, and it's like painful, bro. Like you go in there and it feels like you got transported to like the 1990s or 80s or something, where like, you put on a name tag and people just want to know what you do so they can see how you can help them rather than the opposite of that. And, you leave with 28 business cards that you've put immediately into the trash can when you get home. You just took it because you were trying to be nice. You know what I mean? Like that, there's so many things about that I just don't think work for long-term relationship building. Obviously, if you talk to enough people, you're going to get some business because it's a numbers game. But what I tell people all the time is like, stop making a people game a numbers game. And numbers have their place. And I'm a big numbers guy. I like math, and I did door-to-door sales for 6 or 7 years. And that was a total numbers game. How many doors did I knock on? Because I want to know, how many sales I can convert in a certain amount of doors. That tells me like I'm a fan of metrics, and I'm a fan of numbers, but people too often, I think, focus purely on the numbers and not on the people. And I think that's a short-term version of thinking. The way that I foresee that happening, unfolding in a 30-year time period, is you always have to keep going to those cocktail mixers. If you do it when you're 25, you're going to do it when you're 55, because you're always going to have to go out and get new business, because you're not focused on the longevity of your relationships. You're focused on the short-term transacting of your relationship. And so you might overlook a really, really important relationship because they can't help you right now. But in a decade from now, it could have been a catalyst to lead you to an introduction that might have gotten you $3 million in venture capital to help you start this new company and turn you from a, $500,000 business into a $50 million business. Like, you don't know the benefits of long-term connecting and relationship building until you experience some of those effects. And so that's what I try to help people understand right now, and just to trust in the process and understand that good things are going to happen if you focus on long-term relationships rather than short-term transactions. And the guy focusing on short-term transactions, by the way, sometimes it's hard because you think that they're beating you. You think that they're being more successful, right? Like, well, that guy made, let's say you're a real estate agent, right? And you're trying to break 6 figures for the first time, and you're trying to do what I'm saying. You're focusing on long-term relationships and building longevity with clients and stuff like that. And then this other guy's focusing on short-term transactions, and he goes and makes $200,000 this year, and you're stuck at $80,000. You're like, man, what that guy's doing is working. Well, what you really want to do is go look at the top 1%. Go look at the people who are pulling in 7 figures running their real estate agency, listing and helping people buy houses. Like, go look at them and see what they did. And I guarantee it's way less short-term transacting and way more long-term relationship building. And they've probably been in the business for at least 5 years, probably more like 10, 15 years, because they've put in the work ahead of time to be the go-to person, the top-of-mind real estate agent when it comes to high net worth individuals in their town, or whatever it is, right? So I just have this internal belief that the longevity will always beat the short-term thinking, and not to say that you won't have success in the short term either. If you do it the right way, I think that you can have success short term. Obviously, I think I'm an example of that. I've been doing podcasting for 2 years. Most people will never make a dime off their show, and I went full time with it in 13 months. And now this year will be my best year ever, even better than my direct sales years, because I was focusing on relationships. And though that's a pretty short period of time, you know what I mean? Like 2 years is not that long of a time to be doing something, to see a good amount of success from it. But I think that in 10 years, the success will be so heavily outweighing the short-term success that I've seen, because I'm focusing so much on like creating long-term relationships with people. So I think that's one of the biggest problems with the old way of networking is short-term thinking. So it's all the practical activities like handing out business cards, attending cocktail mixers, asking people what they do, and then learning your elevator pitch and stuff like that. I think that's all part of that, but it's more the philosophy. It's changing your thinking, the way that you view networking and people and relationships. And I think that if you can do that, you're gonna see a lot more success. So that answered the first part of your question, but I forget what the second part of your question was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You definitely crushed the first part of the question, right? And I think the big takeaway for me was you had a quote that says, stop treating a people game like a numbers game. And I think that's a very great takeaway, right? Making sure that you're just getting to know people. You don't know where these relationships are going to go, but get to know them. If you can help them or they can help you, that's great. But try to get to know people and build the relationship, as opposed to immediately discarding someone because they can't help you immediately. So the second part, you kind of talked about what not to do. The second part was, what should we be doing when we go to a networking event, or as we're looking to build our network? What should we be doing? What are some best practices that maybe aren't so obvious?
Yeah, I think first of all, you need to be focusing on building a well-rounded network, which is I think problem that most people have. So when you go to a cocktail mixer, a lot of times people get really good at connecting with people who are on the same level that they're on. And I think there's value in that. And I honestly do. But people rarely take the time to get to know people up here, and they don't take the time to get to know people down here. Once they've made it to this level, they don't talk to people down here. And then once they made it to this level, they don't talk to people up here because they don't believe that they can access those people or hold a conversation with them. So what I tell people is, you need to have a well-rounded network. You need to build relationships across with everybody that you're on this, quote unquote, same or similar level on. And by the way, stop fooling yourself and pretending like there's no levels in life. There are definitely levels. It's just like, I'm sorry, but that's just the way that it is. Like, there are levels of success, and you know what I mean. If you're struggling to break 6 figures as a real estate agent, then people on your level are probably going to be people that are like struggling to break 6 figures as a real estate agent, or they just broke 6 figures last year, like same or similar level. Like, you guys have produced a similar amount of production in a similar industry, and you're connecting with people of that same caliber. then the problem is people never connect up and people can never connect down. And so I think it's important to be doing all three of those. I think you should always be reaching up and getting help from people that are up here. You should always be reaching down and helping people up from where you were, because wouldn't you have liked to have that happen for you when you were in that position? And then you should always be reaching out, because there could be people that are having these different ideas. Like, these are the people probably that you're going to collaborate with more. Like, these are people that you're going to have, big brainstorming discussions, because like your time is of equal value and importance a lot of those times. So they're the people that you're going to hop on a phone call with for a couple of hours on a Saturday to bullshit and talk about how you're going to implement this new thing, and it's a strategy that you learned recently, and that you guys are going to help sharpen each other, right? And then people up here are going to be the mentors in your life, the people that are going to help you avoid some of the pitfalls that they made on their journey. And the people down here, you're going to help them avoid some pitfalls that you made on your journey. And it's just like this big constant thing that's moving and shifting and growing all the time. And it's just like, if you think about it, it's just like almost this barrel of monkeys picture that happens. Like, you pull one up and they all hold on to each other, and you're pulling it. Like, that's almost the picture that you're getting, because like you're reaching up and somebody up here is pulling you up, and then you're reaching down and you're pulling somebody else up, and then everybody across is like helping each other be stronger and like collaborate more. So that's the first thing. I think if the only thing about your networking plan is going to cocktail mixers and events where you're going to meet people of the same level, I think that's a mistake. I think you need to, on purpose, figure out a way to get in front of people who are that are operating on a level that you can't even comprehend, and then also reaching down and helping other people, because first of all, it helps people, which is a good reason in and of itself. But also, they say you never learn something until you can teach it. And so if you're mentoring on that level, regardless of what it is, like, you'll always know something a little bit more than somebody who doesn't know that thing. So people have this mentality where it's like, well, I can't coach people until I hit 7 figures. Well, if you're a $150,000 a year real estate agent, there's a lot of people, probably 95% of agents, that would love to make $150,000 in a year. So you could reach out and help somebody that just made $30,000 that last year, and you can teach them how to make $100,000, right? Like, there's always somebody that you can help, and there's always somebody that you can learn from. And so I think you need to have a really well-rounded network. That'd be the first thing that I would say.
No, I love that. And I love too that you mentioned that you can always help someone. I think that's a really important point, right? Especially in the real estate game, because, it's very easy to look at people who've done massive amounts of deals or assets under management and feel like they're untouchable, or you'll never get there, and put them on a pedestal. And I think if you start to really break that down, understand how they did it, understand what they did to get there, and build the connections. I mean, most people, especially in real estate, are pretty cordial. If you reach out, most of the time, they're all looking to build their network because they understand it's the backbone of their business. So most people do respond to inquiries or emails or phone calls, coffee. I mean, it just depends on who they are and how busy they are. But reaching out, and I love your point about reaching up, reaching down, and then kind of building out kind of that horizontal network where you can ideate and build across different people and different groups. I know you've got your event coming up, How to Build Your Network Live. That sounds like a perfect opportunity for someone who is looking to kind of build up, down, and around. Talk to us a little bit more about what the event actually is and why you decided to create this.
Yeah, so the event is going to be out here in Vegas, coming up really, really soon, November 8th through 10th. The reason that I built it was I saw a lack of this happening in the business event space, and I kept going to events where you sit down. And by the way, these are great events. I'm not like knocking these events for what they do, but I think that there's just an oversight that I kind of wanted to fix with my own event. So you go, there's like 1,000 other people, and you sit down in a chair and you just watch content all day. You watch speakers. There's like 12 speakers in a row. You get a 3-minute bathroom break. You get a 27-minute lunch break. There's never any time to talk to anybody except for after the event's over and it's 11 o'clock and you're at the hotel bar. And then it just turns into one of those cocktail mixers. So what I wanted to do was build an event where connection was the primary focus and content was the secondary focus. And so that's what we did. We have some amazing speakers. We still have a ton of really good speakers that are coming in, some in real estate, actually, some just because that's how my network trends, but also some other people that are just great online marketers, influence marketers, people who run $50 to $100 million businesses. We have a great lineup of speakers that are coming out, but the best thing is going to be the connection. Getting out there and being able to connect with a bunch of these people in person is really the main focus of the events. We're going to do a little bit more like networking type activities and things like that encourage people to get out and meet people and collaborate and build real experiences, because I think relationships come from experiences and memories, and they don't come from contact information. So I'm way more interested in getting people to like experience things together, create some memories, and have some fun, rather than just getting somebody's email address. So it's going to be a really small, intimate event, 50 to 75 people. There's like 12 speakers. So the ratio of attendees to speakers is a really, really great ratio in favor of the attendees, better than any other event that I've seen these speakers speak at. I'll say that. That's for sure. So you're definitely going to want to make it out to Vegas. If you live here, it's a no-brainer because it's at Topgolf and I'm paying for lunch both days. So just lunch and golf at Topgolf for 2 days is actually would cost you more than coming to my event would. So if you're in Vegas, it's a no-brainer. It's $99. Come out. You won't regret it. That's buildyournetworklive.com.
No, that sounds amazing, man. So buildyournetworklive.com. I love the concept. I mean, we talked a little bit about before we hit the record button, but from a philosophy standpoint, I couldn't be more in line. We launched the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit with a very similar premise. Similar to you, I would go to these real estate events and it was either a guru, presenting for however long it took to get you to buy this super expensive course, or it was a really good networking event, or I should say real estate content, but not a whole lot of time to really connect with the people in the room. And going back to the whole point is, for us, it's really about the network. You get to a point where you certainly never know everything, but you get to a point where you know most of the information. You might pick up a nugget or two that's very helpful or beneficial at a conference, but what's really the benefit for most of us is building a relationship or a connection, whether that's vertically up, vertically down, around, somebody in a different strategy. It's really building those relationships that can help you take your business to the next level. So I think focusing on the networking aspect of it is really important. You actually just gave me a couple of ideas of things we can implement with our events going forward to really help foster that, because that's going to be the key. I mean, I could get up and I can teach or give you some tips and tools all day long, but those relationships are going to be way more impactful than anything you could really read by either Googling or sitting down and checking out podcasts like this, or even your podcast. Ultimately, you need those people who can help you build the connections and take your business to the next level.
For sure.
So, Travis, you started to get into some of those best practices. Give me something that's just kind of eye-opening that you would not have guessed that you learned from either the podcast or hosting your own events, as far as a key tool or technique that is great for building your network.
Hands down, starting a podcast. Like not even a close second. Like first place, hands down, the number one thing that exploded my network in the last couple of years is having this podcast. The relationships that you can create, the time of day that people are willing to give you because you have a platform is insane to me. People that would say no. When I first started, I thought I was doing myself a favor by asking people for like a 3-minute pick your brain phone call, right? And figured out really quickly.
Yeah, I got to laugh.
Figured out really, really quickly that did not work. And, but then they would see my email signature. Like one person in particular, like literally read my email signature and said, "Oh, I see you have a podcast. I'd be happy to jump on that and chat sometime." I was like, wait. So you're going to say no to a 3-minute phone call, but yes to a 35-minute Zoom call that I can record and share out to people and share credibility with your name? Like mind blown. And that was like really when it clicked for me. And it was a unexpected side effect of having the podcast. And I tell everybody, man, like even if you're not somebody that's going to like go pursue this full time like I did, and you're not going to try to get 30, 40, 50 million downloads in the next decade, then like even if that's not you, you should still start a podcast, just because it helps you build authority and helps you position yourself properly with experts that are in your niche and in your industry. So like just that in and of itself is worth all of the time that you put into starting and producing a podcast. It's been the number one tool for me by far.
Yeah, Travis, I mean, I echo your sentiment, right? I mean, I think for us, we've seen similar things, and it's not necessarily about the downloads. I think some people get really caught up in how many downloads do you have or what are the numbers, and it's not necessarily about that. I think part of what it is one, first and foremost, building the relationships. I mean, the way I look at it, I get a chance to talk to highly influential, highly successful people across the country at least once a week. Now we're doing the show twice a week. So you get a chance to talk to these highly successful people, right? So that's the first thing. I mean, to your point, me calling up some of these super established, syndicators or marketers and saying, hey, let me pick your brain on what you're doing to grow your Instagram followers. They'd be like, dude, no, go kick rocks. Or I got this program, go buy it for, $100 or $500 or whatever. Right. But to say, hey, I'd love to interview you on my podcast, I'm still going to ask all the same questions. I'm just going to
free mentorship call, bro.
It's a free mentorship call, right? You get the cameras
just for
rolling.
Fun, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but just for fun, one time I asked around to a bunch of people that I had on my show. I was just texting them. I was just like, hey, just out of curiosity, what would you charge for like a 30-minute phone call, like a 30-minute coaching call? Yeah. And some of the answers were crazy, bro. Like some people were just like, I probably would charge $5,000 for that. I was like, $5,000 for 30 minutes. But I mean, the dude's running like a $75 million business. You know what I mean? Like if he's going to take 30 minutes of his time to help you with your business rather than his business, like that's worth a lot of money. But I got to sit down with him for free for an hour, asking him all the questions in the world that I want to ask him because I have a podcast. Like it's just crazy, man. Like it's just that level of positioning that you get from having a show.
And I think it's twofold, right? And so the obvious question someone might have listening to this, well, why would they do this to be on your podcast and not do the phone call with you? Well, you have to keep in mind, it's all about value. Mm-hmm. Doing a podcast, it provides value to the guest as well, because you provide a platform for them to talk about themselves, talk about their service, demonstrate their expertise, and reach an audience that maybe they wouldn't have reached otherwise. So for them, if they get on your show and someone's listening that's in your network who maybe wasn't aware of this individual and it fits something that they're working on right now, that's a great value for them. So it's a nice exchange of value that works really well. And again, it doesn't matter if it works way better if you have 100,000 downloads or 1 million downloads or something like that. But nonetheless, you can still get high quality guests, even if you don't have big download numbers. So I think there's something really compelling there. And I love that that's kind of your number one thing, because it does provide authority. And Travis, one more thing that you said, I want to make sure we hit on. You said the word, let me use their credibility. That's something that I'm really big on. So my background's in marketing, and if you really pay attention to what a lot of big advertisers do, a lot of times they bring in a celebrity or somebody who has a lot of influence. And the point is very simply, right? If this person is associated with this product or this service, there's some credibility there that I can be comfortable doing that too. But when you have a podcast guest, you bring on a big name in the space, they actually lend a little bit of credibility to you as a host. And every time you do that, you get a little bit more credibility each time you kind of have one of these episodes. And it gets to the point where now you become incredibly credible. And it's not that anything has really changed with you, but by being able to attract these guests, and obviously your show has to be good. I mean, it's got to be good quality content, and you have to be able to demonstrate your knowledge and expertise as well. But if you're able to attract these high quality guests, then you get to benefit too. So by all means, I couldn't agree more that launching a podcast is a phenomenal way to demonstrate your expertise, build solid relationships, and grow your network. Now, you were going to say something else, so I'll shut up and let you talk.
It was just going to further that point. I was just talking about positioning and sharing credibility, creating authority for yourself in the space. Like I've never called myself a networking expert, but a lot of people call me that now just because that's what my brand is about. Like I don't brand myself I say I'm a professional connector, meaning like I connect people for a living is mostly what I do, but I don't call myself an expert networker, but people call me like the king of networking and like the king of connection. And like when they're doing introductions for me on a show or whatever, like I never told them to say that, but they just assume that of me because they see the guest list that I've had on my show and they know I talk about networking. So they're like, well, he must be pretty good at networking if he's gotten all these people on his show. And that's what his show is about. So a great way for me to describe him is a networking guy, right? So like now I'm top of mind for something. And in an industry like real estate, it's probably even more exaggerated because there's some real estate influencers, but nowhere near the amount of real estate people there are, if that makes sense. Like the ratio of real estate influencers to real estate professionals is insanely skewed in favor of having the professionals. So you could talk to somebody who's running a $500 million syndication who just doesn't know that like there's a ton of content being created out there. And like they don't know the difference between Bigger Pockets and your show, or Bigger Pockets and the fact that you just started your show last week. Like, they don't know the difference between those things. So they're not going to be proud and too arrogant to be like, oh, I'm not going to come on your show until you have this thing, this thing, this thing. Cause they don't even know what to look for that even determines what a quality show is. You know what I mean? Like, so even in the real estate industry, I've been trying to tell people in real estate to do podcasts for so long, bro, because it's one of the most saturated industries in the world. And in saturated industries, you have to make yourself stand out and you have to differentiate yourself and you have to become an authority. And the best way to do that is through podcasting, YouTube, or books. And of those three, podcasting requires the least amount of work to make it the most professional possible. So I always tell people, like, man, start a podcast. Like, just get into it. Do this. Like, you can bend the ear of so many people that are super successful in the field, and they're not going to have a ton of hesitations. Like, for me, it's a little bit more difficult because I'm in the podcasting space. So when I try to get giant influencers on the show, they know exactly what to look for because they have their own top high level podcasts, and they're like, you know what I mean? Like, they can easily call out bullshit better than somebody who doesn't have those things. So like, they might look at a show and be like, hey, I saw you just launched 3 months ago. You only have 14 episodes. I know that most podcasts don't make it past episode 11. So like, maybe hit me up when you have 40 or 50 episodes and over 100 ratings and reviews. Cause then at that point, I know that you have a credible show and it's actually going to be worth my time. Somebody that doesn't know those things, like, they don't know. They just know that you have a podcast, and that immediately puts you on an authority level in their eyes because you're helping them create more content and you're seen as an authority from that individual. So don't feel like you have to be, the Bigger Pockets podcast to feel like you have a really an impact or you can create authority in your space, especially if you're in real estate.
No, Travis, great tips there. I love all of that. On your website, you have a download available for 11 networking tips from the course of over 200 episodes. For our listeners, by all means, go to Travis's website. You can check that out. Travis, what's the website?
TravisChappell.com. Made a real plain and simple. So TravisChappell.com. That's 2 P's, 2 L's. Travis.
All right, so you guys can check that out on his website. But Travis, give us just a couple of those tips that you haven't mentioned already.
So a couple of them would be, besides starting a podcast, the number one thing, the biggest tip is add value. It's all about the value add. I always tell people that your network will always increase in direct proportion to the amount of value that you can add to other people. So like, let's take the podcasting thing, for example. If you just started a show a month ago and you have 9 episodes launched and you have 75 downloads per episode, you're going to be able to get a certain amount of people on the show because you have a certain amount of value to add. Now take that same show and make it somebody like my buddy Jordan Harbinger, who has 6 million downloads a month. And now, because he has a more of a valuable service or a more valuable show or platform that gets people in front of literally millions of people, like larger distribution than like Time Magazine and stuff like that, because he has that allows him to connect with more valuable people because he has more value to add. Does that make sense? So like, you can add value to anybody if you can look hard enough, but the more valuable of a person you become and the more you do work on yourself to become a more valuable person, the more value that you're going to be able to add to other people. So that's why Jordan interviewed Kobe Bryant like a couple weeks ago in person. Like, he got that interview because he's done the work to create that much value so he can connect with somebody that's super valuable, that's somebody that's, everybody wants to connect with and get to know, and he gets to sit down with them for an hour and have a conversation in person because he's built up a show that has a ton of value. So translate that to whatever it is that you do. For me, it's podcasting, but whatever it is that you do, like, think about how you can make yourself better, whatever that is. Like, that's why you always have to be constantly working on yourself, because the amount of value that you can offer is directly correlated to the network that you're able to build. So focus on, like, master the value add, and you will never have a problem networking.
Add value. I mean, that's the key. And when you're networking out there and meeting people, add value, get yourself to the point where you can add more value, and it just becomes kind of a snowball rolling downhill. The more value you can add, the easier it will be to network with people, to add value to them, to grow your network, and to continue to add more value. So great tips there. We've talked about podcasting a little bit here. For anyone who is, let's start with someone who's established. You have a podcast today. What's a tip that someone can do to grow their podcast reach and influence to maybe attract some of these more high profile guests?
Yeah. Number one question I ask people when they ask me that is, where is the only place that we know 100% for sure that podcast listeners hang out? Podcasts.
Podcast, yeah.
It's the only place. You know what I mean? Like there's 250 million podcast listeners. There are 2 billion users on Facebook. So it always is comical to me when people try to grow their podcasting audience with Facebook ads, because it's really difficult to find podcast listeners on Facebook. And there are obviously some different things you can do for targeting to make sure that you have a higher percentage of being in front of that audience. But it's really difficult to tell who listens to podcasts and who doesn't. So when you put money behind all these other advertising platforms, you're having to convince people of two things. You have to convince them, like, first of all, listen to my show. Second of all, listen to podcasts. Like, you're trying to convince them to consume a form of media that they're not used to consuming, which is more difficult than getting them to subscribe to your show. So the number one way to grow your podcast is by getting on other podcasts, like 100%. Like, hands down, the number one way that I've grown my show is getting on other people's shows. And if you're gonna put advertising dollars in, advertise on other people's shows, buy ad spots on other people's shows. But if you don't have the budget, then connect with, network with, add value to the top hosts in the niche that you're in, and try to figure out a way to get on those people's shows, because that'll be the number one growth factor for your show.
Great tips there, Travis. You just blessed us with a lot of phenomenal information. I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to transition to our Bullseye Round. For someone who is looking to launch a podcast right now, I know you're helping people out getting started. Give them one tip to make that decision, right? How do they, what's a tip or something that they can do to go from thinking about launching a podcast to actually taking that first step to getting that podcast going?
Yeah, better done than perfect. Don't worry about perfection. You just got to be okay with the fact that you're probably going to suck. Like, you just got to come to terms with that, man. Like, it's a hard thing to come to terms with. You know what I mean? Like, where it's just like, I'm going to put this out. It's probably not going to be good. And I won't even know that it's good, because I'm obviously doing my best. So when I'm going to listen back to it, it's going to sound pretty good. I'm going to be pretty proud of it. But now if I go back and listen to my first 30, 40 episodes, it's like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. I can't believe that I put that stuff out there. But like Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, says that if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you waited too long to launch. And I tell people that all the time about their podcasts. Like, if you're not embarrassed by your first few episodes when you're a year or two in, then you waited way too long to launch your show. Like, don't worry about being a professional at first. Just like, get started and get going on something. The second thing I would say is, if you're truly committed to making it happen and making it like another part of your income, then hire a coach or consultant. Like, not just me. There's a lot of other people that are great at it out there, but they're just going to help you shorten the curve, shorten the runway, and get you to where you want to be a lot faster.
Love it, Travis. Let's move on to our Bullseye Round. How has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success?
So many times, man. I can't even count. There's so many like little things that I tried along the way in the last 7 or 8 years that have been just like total failures. And, but they, every time I learned something new. So even coming into the podcasting thing, I had a water machine dealership that didn't do well. I split my focus between the podcast and the water machine dealership, and it was still profitable and I still made money, but basically the sales reps ended up leaving and going to work for somebody else because I wasn't focused in on that business as much as I needed to be. And so that was a failure that set me up for the podcasting success, because it forced me to go all in and be full-time with the podcast, which was ended up being super beneficial.
Love it. What is the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year?
I'll have to go. There's a few of them, just because there's so many different types of books. But one that I tell a lot of people to listen to is Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, because I think it helps you rewire your brain in the way that you think about and view money, which I think is very important.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Zoom. I do so much on Zoom. We're talking on Zoom right now, but I use it for coaching calls. I use it for all my interviews. It's a great software. I highly recommend using Zoom.
What is a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Daily habit would be learning, some form of learning, like 10 minutes of an audiobook or 10 pages of a book, at least, like bare minimum. But I usually have a podcast in my ears or playing, something. Recently, I've been going through a book that I got on audio and the physical copy, and I think I'm going to start doing that a lot more. So I've just taken time in the mornings to like read it and listen to it at the same time, and it's like helping my comprehension a little bit more. So that's been something cool I've been trying out recently.
Cool. Why? What drove that decision to start listening to the audiobook and reading the physical book?
I've thought about it for a long time. I just never did it because it was always two different forms of consumption for me. Like if it was an audiobook, I'd just listen to it in my car. And if it was a physical book, I would just read it when I'm sitting down somewhere and I can give it full attention. So this one, I was just like, just curious on if it would be any better or any different. And I wanted to have a physical copy. I got it on Audible first. And then I was just curious, or it was a book that I wanted in my library regardless. So I was like, I'll just get the physical copy anyway. And when it came in, I just like picked it up and was, decided to go through it when I was listening to it. And but I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, there are a few books that I've done the same thing to. I haven't listened to them simultaneously, but I've listened to an audiobook and said, I want the physical version of this. Yeah. Or the physical version, because some of them are like, you kind of want to reference them, and it's kind of hard on like audiobooks to like, hey, he said something and
pull up an underline or a highlight.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of hard to just like flip through and find that quote or that example, or maybe it's something that can really spark your energy. So to have that physical version, I think still has a lot of value. But it's easier to listen to audiobooks. I will say this on the flip side, there are a couple audiobooks where I've listened to them. I've had to stop. I'm like, I know this is great content and great information, but the voice is crushing me, and I just can't listen. I just can't listen to this anymore.
Some are better read, some are better listened to, for sure. The one I'm listening to right now, I highly recommend listening to, especially if you're interested in networking. It's called Talking to Strangers. It's Malcolm Gladwell's new book, who's a New York Times bestselling author, world-renowned psychologist already. So his book, Talking to Strangers, is really well done. They made the audiobook almost like a high production podcast. So they actually have like voice actors come in and like do different parts of it. And it's a very, very engaging audiobook for sure. I've enjoyed it a lot.
That's awesome. I know I'm derailing my own Bullseye Round, but I do it pretty frequently. I will say one other book that I really enjoyed as the audiobook that probably is better as an audiobook than the physical is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, because he actually breaks down
going through every the same
chapter
thing right now too. Yeah. That's the audiobook. My wife and I have been going through that one. So I've been, when I'm just doing my reading in the morning and stuff, I'm not going through that one because she would get mad at me if I finished it without her. So it's like what we reserve for our road trips and stuff together at the moment. But yes, also a really good example.
It's like 12 hours. So it's long, but it's
crazy.
But it's really good. It's really good. Cool. I'll check that one out for sure. All right. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
I wish I would have started a podcast sooner. Honestly, but like if I was, 19, 20, when I first started in door-to-door and stuff and into business and sales, if I would have started a podcast back then, like, oh man, I'd be so much further ahead of where I am right now. Like, man, if I would have had a podcast running for 7 years, like if I would have started this back in 2012, like it would be so much bigger and better. And I would have learned so much more and been so much farther ahead if I would have jumped in sooner rather than later.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about YouTube right now. I have always been podcasting and, have seen some success with podcasting, but YouTube is where I'm turning some of my attention to. I think there's some really unique things about the platform that give it advantages over podcasting sometimes. Both are great, but I think I'm going to start putting out some more content on YouTube around the end of this year, beginning of 2020.
That's awesome. We're also exploring that as well. That's part of the reason we started doing more video, knowing that there's an opportunity there to get into it, especially from an SEO standpoint. So if you're looking to have people who are searching for, even if they're on Google searching, having YouTube videos pop up, that's probably a great way to start to gain some traction. So we're exploring a similar kind of things too.
Awesome. Yeah, discoverability is huge on YouTube. It sucks on podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. All right, last question for you, Travis. Give me the best place to grab a bite in your city out there in Vegas.
That's a good question, man. I would say a pretty universal one. One of our go-to spots is called Skinny Fats. And I think they have locations other than Vegas, but they have like 5 in Vegas. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is where they kind of started. I'm not 100% sure on that though. But yeah, I love it. They have like 2 sides of the menu, a happy side and a healthy side. But even like their quote unquote unhealthy stuff, like it's just unique food. Like their healthy stuff isn't regular healthy stuff. It's actually good tasting and like just different, just like unique combinations of just like good tasting, well, seasoned and well cooked food with high quality, meats, and it's just one of our go-to spots.
Awesome. I love it. Look, Travis, you've given us a ton of great information on building your network. I love all your tips on actually adding value and not treating this like it's the 70s or 80s, walking around throwing your business card to everybody, but truly focusing on the individual. You gave that quote about, stop treating a people game like a numbers game. So a lot of great content you provided. I appreciate you coming on Target Market Insights. For our listeners who want to hear more, maybe they want to start a podcast or check out the event you have coming up, can you give us your website one more time and let people know where they can hear more about you?
Yeah, travischappell.com, 2 P's, 2 L's, travischappell.com. You can find everything on me there. I'm on all social channels. I probably spend the most time on Instagram though. So hit me up over there, shoot me a DM. That's at Travis Chappell.
Travis, take care, man. Thank you again for coming on. You got that event November 8th through 10th, you said, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's coming up as well, so you can check that out. Travis, lots of great information here. Thank you again for coming on Target Market Insights. We'll be in touch soon, man. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.